So let me welcome everyone on this webinar, on this community webinar, which is about BIM for Heritage. We're going to explore Heritage BIM inside Archicad with our Reuse Italy sponsorship. We have here a couple of people who will help us with this webinar. But before that, let me remind you about a couple of things. The chat will be open during the entire webinar for you to be able to ask questions. At the end of the whole webinar, we will have about 15 minutes to answer relevant questions to the webinar, where we will also enable your video and your audio feeds, so you can feel free to ask your questions in the chat. But if you want to turn on your camera, if you want to actually address your question to us in person, then please turn on your camera and audio around the end of the session. We will also be recording this, so not the Q&A bit, but everything that we're going to present today will be recorded and hopefully will be published on our community platform under the webinar link. Great, so without further ado, let's jump right into our topics. Before we start with our presentation, let me introduce everyone who is here with us during the call. So we have here James, who is our product manager, who will be helping us during the Q&A session to answer product-related questions. Pelin Haynes, a product marketing expert, who will be helping us with tips and tricks on working with Pointclouds and Archicad, and also to answer related questions during the Q&A. We have Giovanni Lo Giudice, our colleague from our Italian office, education coordinator, who is, by the way, the author of the base model. So thank you very much, Giovanni, for your contributions. He is also a jury on the Reuse Italy competition representing Graphisoft. So please welcome him as well. We have Sarah Parkinson, education coordinator from the United States, who will be helping us with explaining you all the other assets that are available during our sponsorship program. And finally, me, Sabi Miko, I'm an education program manager, and I will be doing a couple of demos for you, plus a little quick overview about HBIM overall, talking a little bit about what sort of Archicad model we have prepared for you, how you can utilize already Archicad 27 during the competition with the free licenses that we make available for you during the time. And we will also want to talk a bit about teamwork. So let me give over the word to Sarah, who will just quickly summarize how our sponsorship with Reuse Italy looks.
Awesome. Thank you, Savi. So hopefully you all can see my screen. As Savi mentioned, I'm Sarah. I'm part of Graphisoft's education team, and I help connect students, teachers, and schools with software licenses and training resources. And then I work on partnerships like this one with Reuse Italy. So for those who aren't already participating, Reuse Italy hosts an annual competition that asks participants to reimagine historic Italian sites for the modern era. The current Reuse the Thermae competition is open now through January 17th, and I'd encourage you all to visit reuseitaly.com for more info about getting involved. It's a really cool offering. As competition sponsors, Graphisoft's goal is to give participants robust design tools to support their creative visions. So we give free Archicad licenses to all participants for the duration of the competition. To facilitate teamwork, we also provide free access to BIM Cloud, which allows multiple users to collaborate in real time on a single Archicad file. And of course, we're also sharing a detailed BIM model of the site with you all to kickstart your submissions. To access these resources, you'll need to log in to the members area of the Reuse Italy competition site and scroll down to the section that says Archicad BIM model. There's a button there to download the site, or to download the site model, as well as a button that will take you to the Graphisoft licensing page for the competition. And that's the area highlighted at the bottom there in orange. So here is what that licensing page looks like. to get started with Archicad, you'll register here on this page for a Gravasoft ID, and then you'll request a license also from this page. And your license activation information will arrive by email. Below that, you'll also see the area where you and your team can sign up for free BIM Cloud access. So now that you all have access to these resources, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to share a bit more about how to get the most out of them. And first up, we have Sabi again with a Heritage BIM overview.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So let me share my screen back again, and hopefully everything works. So I'm just going to do a quick overview about Heritage BIM in general, what the differences are between traditional BIM and Heritage BIM, and what are the resources that we use to create such models within Archicad, and how that looks for us within the context of the Reuse Italy competition. So yeah, so there's a slight difference between traditional BIM and HBIM, whereas traditional BIM, where it's primarily used for contemporary construction projects, which includes new design, construction, and facility management. HBIM, there's a slight difference. It's specialized for historic and restoration structures, focusing on preservation, documentation, and restoration. We're going to show you a couple of examples on what that really looks like. The approach to these are also a little bit different. While traditional BIM prioritizes performance and efficiency in the contemporary construction, allowing for adjustments and improvements throughout the design and the construction process, HBIM is pretty much focused on preserving historical authenticity. So these are the type of information that we would also have in there, and we are working on making sure that the cultural significance is there, and that it's minimizing the changes to the original structure. Project stakeholders in traditional BIM, the classic setup, architects, engineers, contractors, facility managements, and many, many more. When it comes to HBIM, we're also working with heritage conservationists and historians on how to build up the model itself, and eventually how to go through the entire design process. When it comes to regulatory compliance, traditional BIM has more standards, complies with contemporary building codes and standards, while HBIM complies with heritage preservation regulations and guidelines. How this is actually done, we have two main phases in the design, in the modeling process. First, the data collection, the building surveying, and additional historic research, which then helps us to recreate the model itself. And then the modeling and documentation bit is done in a BIM authoring tool, such as, for example, Archicad. The data collection and the historical research is usually working with archival records and documentation, collaboration with historians, and cross-references these historic records with each other. Looking at the original design, seeing the building's architectural evolution, the construction techniques that were used for the building, ownership and use history of the building. So, for example, in case of one of the projects that our clients did in Mantova, these are just examples on the historic research that helps you to have a better understanding about the building itself. Data collection also involves building surveying. In this case, we have different complexity of surveys depending on the, let's say, size of the details. So there are a couple of general surveying methods: photogrammetry, laser scanning, hand measurements, GNSS, and so on. Generally, the most common currently is laser scanning and creating point clouds based on photogrammetry. This was again done during this example, and we're going to show a similar workflow during the Reuse Italy topic that we have right now. This is just another example, but on a way larger scale from an aerial view. The data collection and the building surveying is then continued in combining a point cloud from all of these different sources, from the laser scanning, from the photogrammetry, using the photos on site, using GPS and GIS data, which then creates a combined point cloud, which usually can be extremely huge, which then we optimize by only selecting certain areas of it, cleaning it out, reducing the point density, and then creating an optimized point cloud. In our case, we were lucky enough that Reuse Italy has provided us with this point cloud, which we're going to get into very soon. Based on the point cloud and based on all the materials that we have gathered, we would start the modeling and documentation process, which would already contain graphical information and non-graphical information. So the metadata, the BIM metadata, or the HBIM metadata that needs to go into each model. Here, of course, we would probably create the model first and then reclassify, detail, and add the metadata to the actual model itself. Later on, the survey documentation can be linked to the model as well, and that's what will provide us with the 2D documentation. This is just an example which Giovanni has helped us to get for this purpose. This is just one example for an HBIM project that we are involved in. In case of one element, in case of one wooden structure in an HBIM project, these are all the different kinds of properties that we might add to the BIM model itself, explaining architectural properties, structural properties, but at the same time, restoration properties such as insect damage, fungi damage, and so on. So these are the types on how HBIM content would look like within Archicad. These are also using the same examples that we have shown from our Italian clients. And these are different scenarios in which how during the renovation process, you could also utilize these informations within HBIM. There's just one more thing that I would like to mention from the theoretical point of view or from the overview point of view. It's future trends where everything is heading, which we're also looking into. Artificial intelligence takes part in, of course, in anything nowadays, but also in HBIM workflows, it might be able to help hugely to create automated scan to BIM workflows, to auto-classify certain elements based on their geometrical data, to enrich the data that is included in the model, and to help us in auto-document these buildings. Let's go into what we have and what we work with during the Reuse Italy competition and what's already at your hand that you can utilize that would be on a certain stage of HBIM content. So as Sarah showed you, under the members page, you can download the Archicad BIM model, which we have prepared in a couple of formats. I do need to mention that these are all in the international version and in the metric system. We were able to provide the model that way. However, with the licenses, you can get a direct license during the time of the competition to Archicad 27 international version licenses. So you are able to try out the new features as well as open up this model and be able to use it right away. So there are three files available there for you. We have saved one in version 26, and then there are two files, a PLN and a PLA format for version 27. The PLA format might come in hand if you already have a license for Archicad 27, for example, but in your localized version, then for all those library parts, all those surfaces that otherwise would be missing, you can use the PLA, so the archive format, and open it up and start working in there. So for creating this, we have used the point cloud that we received from the Reuse Italy team, and on the other hand, created a BIM model from that, which I'm going to walk you through soon. Just this is the one that is made available for you. It's very simple. It starts with a welcome page, which explains where you can contact us in case you have questions related to the model itself. And then there are a couple of prepared views. So we have the model here. This is an axonometric view, but at any time you can shift to the perspective view as well. On the view map, we have prepared a couple of standard views, which helps you to understand what you actually got. This is the model that we have created. Of course, because it's an HBIM project, all sorts of elements were used to model different bits and pieces of the model, morph, terrain, beams, complex profile beams, etc. When it comes to the classification, when it comes to the metadata, everything is already classified correctly. So in case if you would be wondering how you could export this into another format, for example, everything else is reclassified correctly with its structural function. So this is already something that you can start right away and create your own model within. By the way, I'm using Archicad 27 for these demonstrations. As another quick overview, we have a recording of the entire modeling session. So Giovanni has recorded everything on how he created the model from the base point cloud. This is just a glimpse and an example on how it's being created. Hopefully, we will be able to share a shortened version with you, which would be a good learning experience on how to work with these kind of models and how to create something similar. Working in point clouds, of course, has a lot of tips and tricks that can help you to work way more effectively within your Archicad environment. And this is why we have here now Pelin with us, who will help us to understand how you can make your life easier within Archicad when working with point clouds, and sharing with us a few useful tips and tricks on how to get started. So Pelin, the stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sabi. Yeah, hopefully everyone sees my screen as well. So now that you've seen the entire model, this really short, quick session will be about, what has been done on the background, probably, or this will also help you in the future point clouds that you'd like to turn into 3D models in Archicad. So hopefully this will give you something to take away from today. So I have 5 minutes allocated to me, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. So when interpreting the scans into 3D models, so the magic word here is the interpret, we will use a few methodologies in Archicad, and sometimes you might need to use one of those methodologies at a time, but majority of the time you'll use a combination of different methodologies, and I'd like to show you each of them with different examples. So my first example is all to do with the topography. So once you bring in your point cloud into Archicad, in the real-time location with the correct north, with the correct orientation, etc. So I'm going to use the same model for my examples. So we've got the point cloud file here. And as you can see, at the moment, we're looking at the entire point cloud from bottom to top. So depending on the intervals that you're after, so in my example, I'm going to go in every 1 meter. So because I'm expecting the documentation set out of this point cloud afterwards, and I might need some, level dimensions to represent all the contour lines on my site plan as well. So what I would do is when I go into the settings of this object, you will see that point clouds also work with floor plan display range. So on top of Archicad's floor plan display, point cloud has their own cutting planes that you can play around with. And at the moment, as you can see, we have a long range to look at. But let's take a look at what we can do if we want to slice and dice this topography, this model. So I'm just simply highlighting the point cloud file. I've already created some favorites for this. So if I just simply, change this point cloud so that I'm cutting from a 1 meter interval on my ground floor, just to go back into the settings, this will just give you an idea. The bottom plane height is 0, which is my ground floor, and I've literally had the top plane as 1 meter. So for the second meter interval, it will be from 1 meter to 2 meter. The third meter interval will be will continue. Okay, so once you change your cutting plane within the object settings, part of your point cloud will still be visible. Obviously, you will lose majority of your point clouds, but wherever it's visible, again, you will have a certain number of points here. You just need to trace around those, depending on, I prefer polylines in this case, but if you want to go more accurate, you could use the spline tool if you wanted to. So it's literally tracing around these points. You don't need to be super accurate, by the way. I know that it's very tempting, but in some cases you don't need a certain level of accuracy. So I'm literally just tracing around all these points wherever I can see them, just to represent my 1 meter. If I'll just keep highlighting the same side, and if I change into 2 meters, you will see that obviously at the bottom, I still, my contour lines on 1 meter is still following what I see on my screen, but then I will have more points on my screen, which I will again follow with the next contour line to represent my 2nd meter. Again, if I go to the 3rd meter, I will see the different part of the point cloud. And again, just following my spline tool, polyline tool, whatever tool that you like, I'm just following these. It's just literally several clicks that you can follow. And then basically, once your contour lines are all predefined, and then you can start creating your mesh. So for this, I've just literally used a single mesh tool, and I've just inserted those contour lines, my polylines, as splines, as contour lines on my mesh. And if we take a look at, let's say, this 3 meter contour line, if I just left click on, again, if I just isolate one of these nodes, you will see that it said 3 meters. And once you say apply to all these nodes within that polyline or spline will all be raised to that level. Again, if I just quickly check what's been done here, and again, if I highlight the 2 meters one, go into the settings, and you will see that the height is set to 2 meters. The nice thing about having meshes and the point cloud within the same file is that you can compare the two. So you can take a look at in 3D on the sections elevations. So you can have a combination of the point cloud itself and the mesh that you're modeling, that you're inserting the contour lines on. And then you can follow whether you're, modeling things in the correct location with the correct height, etc. Another, just a little tip, extra tip on this topography. Of course, for your documentation sets, you will be asked for the contour lines sometimes, but on top of that, you might want to show the levels of these contour lines as well. So another useful tool in Archicad is the level dimension tool. So again, by just double clicking or by just clicking on those contour lines, you will get the correct representation, the correct levels that will be useful for your document sets afterwards. So this was to do with the topography. So the methodology that I used here is the slicing up the model by using those cutting planes within the object, within the point cloud object in Archicad. So that is an additional cutting plane on top of the Archicad's cutting planes. Okay, we're talking about topographies. Of course, we can't really skip the foliage around. So I am going to go back to the full site. So you see that we have some hedges, some trees around, some individual trees, etc. So now that you model the topography, you do want to model the trees around your building or the foliage, etc. So how do you do that? Again, another methodology is now we're going to slice the model vertically. And how do we do that? We use the section tool, section marker, elevation marker, etc. So when you take a look at a section, let's say, so you can see that I've placed the section marker, but it has a limited depth. So of course, you don't want to see a lot of things on the background because this will be quite busy on the section. You just want to emphasize this specific tree. So if I just cut to the section to find the parameters, again, you see that more or less, depending on the level of detail that you receive with the point cloud, so, depending on the number of points that you can see on your sections. So sometimes this will be, the tree will be more visible, then you get more information, more accurate information out of it. But if you want to model these trees with the tree object within Archicad, there are certain parameters that you will need to fill in within the object itself. Some of them will be related to trunks, some will be related to crown, and most of this information, you can get this section already. So in terms of the crown, you can already get the width by just literally just measuring from left to right, from furthest left to the furthest right, so that you can type in the width. So in our case, because it's kind of like a uniform tree, luckily, we can put in the same number into the width and the depth section. In terms of the height, again, you can get the crown height from the section as well. So where the trunk finishes and the tree starts branching, from the bottom of that to the top of your crown, you can measure it from your section straight away. The same thing applies to the trunk height. Again, you're just measuring the information from the bottom of the point cloud rather than the ground floor, because sometimes your point cloud objects might have their sea levels, and once they come into Archicad, they might not sit exactly on your ground level, and that's perfectly fine. So for the trunk height, obviously, we'd like to measure things from the bottom of the scan itself rather than the floor plan. But we also have an additional information, trunk diameter. And this, we can get it not only from the section, but we're going to combine the methodology. So we've already learned the cutting planes from the previous example. So we're going to combine these. So we're looking at a section, and this is where we can define what range we can arrange our cutting plane to, so that we can get the trunk information. So if I go to this dimension, cumulative dimension here, I'm just going to simply click on these nodes that I've created here. So you see that more or less 2.3 meters and 2.6 meters. So between this range, I can arrange my cutting plane on the floor plan. So let's go back to the floor plan. Let's highlight the site. And if I, again, just arrange the cutting plane so that it cuts from, so that, again, let me just show you. So you see more or less from 2.2 to 2.5, which is the information I gathered from the section. I can cut it, I can change my cutting plane on the floor plan, and I can, use a circle, for example, to get the diameter information and feed it back into my tree object. Okay, the next tip is to do with the building. Of course, so we modeled the topography, we modeled the foliage around our building. How about the building itself? So again, if you take a look at the model that you will download later on, there are different tools that you can use in Archicad. These could be walls, beams, columns, complex profiles, morphs, etc. So you can model your elements with several elements. But the question is, where do you model them, right? So my tip would be to use the morph tool to define the surfaces in 3D, so that on the floor plan, you can get the external or internal face surface information, so that you place your 3D elements afterwards. What I mean is this. Look, I'm in a 3D view. I'm going to use my morph tool, and I'm simply going to snap on some of these nodes in 3D, and I'm going to place my morphs, let's say, in 3D to represent those surfaces of those walls around here. Okay, so imagine I'm doing this for the roof planes, for all the rest of the walls as well. By going back into the floor plan, you see that I can still see those morph planes, morph surfaces that I've just placed. So all you have to do is, because it was an external surface, you start placing your walls, following these surfaces from your morph tools. And then once you, obviously, because the surfaces are not exactly the same size of the walls, then you can use all these editing options at the top of your screen. You can join them, trim them, split them, etc. So if I were you to place them into the correct location, I would use the morph surfaces in 3D, then come back onto my floor plan, and then start placing my 3D elements, whatever tool that you're using, following those surfaces. And my final...
This is already, apologies for cutting you off. It's extremely useful, so I didn't want to interrupt you so far. We're a little bit over time. Can you summarize the rest in like the next 1 minute, if that's okay?
I only have one more left anyway, so I'll keep this really, really short. Sorry about that. Okay, so the last tip is just spread of points. So now that we're talking about placing 3D elements, the location, the accuracy of those elements could be quite important. What I usually do is, once you receive your point cloud objects, again, depending on where you cut them from, so arrange your cutting planes so that there isn't elements interfering with most of your external elements. And once you adjust your cutting planes, what I usually do is to get the spread lines, the spread of points. I usually, from further inside to further outside, I place 2 lines. I measure the distance between these lines, and if it fits, so there are some regulations that you might need to follow depending on the scale of the project that you're delivering. And if this distance between each line fits into those measurements, then of course, you can just even out this by, finding the middle of those 2 lines. And this middle would be your reference line to place your elements afterwards. Okay, so if you want to learn more about what I've just gone through, obviously on the Learn portal, which I will later on place onto the chat, we do run some courses, so feel free to join those. And yeah, that's it from me. So over to you, James.
Cool. Thanks, Belen. Thanks for that. So design options. This is a new feature that was added into Archicad 27. So this has been on the market for now, I think, a month or two as of now. Design options was introduced based on a lot of user feedback. So we had a lot of requests to implement design options into Archicad over the years. We saw a number of workarounds in the past. So things like using layers, using copying the building, using hot links, using renovation status, so pinning to renovation filters. But we wanted to simplify these workarounds, so offer a dedicated solution, which Sobi will start talking about. But before he does, we have an upcoming webinar, which I think is worth sharing. So if you go to the community site, we have a webinar for next week. We have as part of a competition. So we'd be very happy if you want to attend and also submit some entries to this. But the webinar is open, so go over to the community and sign up. And over to you, Sobi. Thanks.
Thank you, James. So what I prepared with is just a small example on how design options can be utilized even within the context of the reuse utility competition. So here's the file. I'm showing a second file now where I already prepared a couple of design options. Design options is actually a very simple feature to use, so it's very intuitive. It's a palette, so which you can find under the normal palettes, under the palettes here. It's called design options. I have it docked now here. Basically, what I can see is my options set, which I have over here. But the design options manager, which popped up on my other screen, so I needed to drag it over here. You can create design options combinations and different design options sets. So this is very easy to use. There's a ton of material online how to get started with design option manager. I just want to show you how you can utilize it within this context. So for example, here, something that previously, as James mentioned, with a couple of workarounds, you could do it in layer combinations or with phasing or with other tools. Now it's an integrated tool within Archicad. So for example, I have prepared a couple of different scenarios. So for example, if I am exploring this design option to have the cover over this heritage site, or I have prepared another one, which is this glass ceiling type of situation, or a third, which is a little bit more extravagant. But the point is that it's very easy to switch between these different design options. You can view them in also different contexts. So for example, now I am mainly viewing and editing the main model, but I can double click, for example, just on this design option, and that would automatically fade everything else and just very easily highlight for me what is under that design option. Elements can be selected and then relinked to a specific design option. So see here, if I wanted to add these to my glass design option, I would just relink all of these elements and they would go under that option. So it's a very simple thing to use, which I would advise you to try out since you have access to 27 throughout the course of the competition. Another thing that I wanted to mention, this was the demo. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that during the competition, again, you have access to our collaborative platform through BIM Cloud. We have a special service which can help you to get access very easily. So basically, this is a Graphisoft, this is a BIM Cloud SaaS server hosted by Graphisoft in the cloud. All you need to do is to visit the website that Sarah showed you at the beginning, which is accessible from the members page. You need to form teams, select the team leader, and then there are two simple sign-ups forms, one for the team leader and another form another for the team member. You basically gain access to a BIM Cloud interface. And I just want to show you how it looks from your point of view. So if you have, let's say, finalized your design option, and this is the one that you will be continuing to work with, We have already shared this project with Giovanni, but this is the way how you can share. So under Teamwork Project, you have the share option. Otherwise, you sign into our BIM Cloud server. It's different per continent. So if you sign up, you will be sorted on one of our servers. This one is something that we use for an educational purpose, where lots of students and educators sign up for BIM Cloud use globally, but you have access to this server now during the course of the competition. And for me, as to show you how this looks, you will have under the projects folder, under the university name or under the Reuse Italy competition name, you will have a dedicated space where you can share your teamwork files, and you can share that with your teammates. Libraries, by the way, for Archicad 26 and 27 are already shared on this server. So once you have shared it, it's super easy. You can send and receive changes, you can message each other, and you can collaborate regardless of where you are. You just need to have internet. You don't even need to, because you can work occasionally in offline mode. So try to use this opportunity while you are delivering this competition for the projects for Reuse Italy. Great. So there's nothing else left but to answer questions. So I will first stop sharing. And then secondly, I would like to turn on the possibility for all of you to be able to, well, first of all, turn on a camera or your mics if you have a question that you would like to ask personally. So hopefully that is done in just a second. Yes. And let's see if that was successful. So if anyone has anything apart from what we wrote in the chat, then you can raise your hand, please, and then we will go in that order. Otherwise, I had already one question that was from Yazan about how you can make point clouds more simple, how you can reduce the sample size. Either Pelin or Giovanni. Pelin, go ahead and please help us answer that question.
I think they already answered it. So I would have gone with the Cloud Compare as well, which is free to use, that you can split the models into several point cloud files. Because yes, some of the point cloud files will come in quite heavy, and then you might want to split it into, I think the maximum is 4 gig that you can bring in one at a time in Archicad. So you might want to use free software just to split it into several files. Yeah.
There was a second question, which is also related to probably your topic, and that's on how is there any way for us to be able to display point clouds on layouts?
As far as I know, unfortunately, the answer is no at the moment. So point clouds, they come in as a GDL object into Archicad, and they only display in the project map, and they don't translate themselves into layouts for the minute. But yeah, we do have some developments in the point cloud side in the future releases. So this is one of the topics that will come in handy. Yeah. But at the moment, yeah.
And James will probably be able to tell us a bit more about that. But before that, just the tech support engineer in me needs to jump in, because I would definitely think about a workaround, which I think we tried also. If you because point clouds do appear in the 3D window, of course, and 3D window, let's say, images can be actually placed on layouts. So even if it's not an elevation, even if it's not an elevation view or a section view, then a 3D window view could be potentially placed on a layout, which then as a reference or as a back layer or anything can be displayed. I mean, and that's still up to date. I mean, that's just another option that we could use. But I guess the question was oriented towards when it can appear on an elevation rather than a workaround. James, can you share anything about that?
I can try. So we're currently investigating what our sort of future is with point clouds. So we see that we're getting more and more requests each month about this. So on our table, it's becoming a higher priority as we investigate. We don't know how we can solve this yet, but it's something that we're investigating further. So there's nothing more I can announce at this stage, but it's something that we're looking at further. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That sounds promising. Anyone else, any questions, either in the chat or by asking it personally from us? About the competition, about accessing BIM Cloud, about the file itself. We'll wait a few more seconds. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the workaround. I told you. Yeah, no worries, Rogelio. It's not, yeah, good. Good question. Using BIM Cloud, of course, is not mandatory. This is an additional option for teams to be able to use it. So if you work solo, then of course you would be working in just the template file. If you're collaborating with 1 or 2 people, you might still find it more straightforward to work in the same file without using teamwork. This is just a chance for you to try out what it's like to actually work in BIM Cloud SaaS and what it's like to work in that sort of collaborative environment. So we do encourage you to take the chance, but if you don't, that's absolutely understandable and no pressure. It's not mandatory. Good. Well, the questions will be open under the webinar later on as well under our community. So if anything comes to you later on, then please post your questions there. This recording will be available on the webinar too. You can reach out to us or to the community also through the forum. Many thanks for then joining today on this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And we enjoyed the chance to present you all of the good things that we have in this sponsorship program. Many thanks for the presenters as well. And then we will see you hopefully next week, talking more about design options. And then there's just a last minute question, which we can answer quickly. Giovanni, do we have any insights on the differences between the jury criteria?
I don't think that there is a balance between technical and creative aspect. Is every people in the jury have some criteria, different criteria. We have no rules about technical or creative aspect for jury the project.
But we could forward this question to Andrea, who is our contact from the Reuse Italy team, and we can potentially help in answering this question again under the webinar chat. So good points. Thanks for asking. Okay, I don't see more questions, so let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining, everyone, and then hope to see you next time.